Yeah, I appreciate that question a lot. Because I think the mysterious and the miraculous are, sometimes in meditation circles, we'll talk about don't get fixated on the mystical or the mysterious because you can get attached to it but I've come to believe that it's a really powerful thing to talk about because a new portal or a new way of understanding the world around you is opened up. So I find the mystical and the mysterious very interesting. Um, I think the first story I would start with is when I was meditating. And so I had already been meditating daily for, at this point, maybe like 8 years or so, on and off, but pretty much a daily meditator. Um, and I had this one day, I was in my apartment. I sat down for a 20-minute meditation. I had done some conscious breathing exercises, and I started having this, it felt like a volcano start in my pelvis, and all of this heat, all of this energy. And I had learned at that point that when something starts to come on in meditation, to open yourself to it instead of judging or reacting, which can sometimes stop the experience. And so I was doing my best to keep myself open to it and not freak out. So I'm breathing, I'm trying to stay with it, I'm trying to stay with it. And it starts to move up my spine a little bit, kind of, maybe to my lower back. Um, and then I come out of it and it relaxes. But this was a very much, we always think of meditation as being this very calm experience, but this was certainly an activation of the sympathetic nervous system. My heart rate was going. I was like, what is going on? Maybe a little bit of like sexual kind of impacts there as well, which was also very confusing. So I was like, what is going on? But as I was coming out of it, and I remember walking over to my window and I looked outside and I felt this just profound presence. Just I could feel the connection between myself and everything, which when you say it, you're like, okay, but when you know it, when you felt it, it takes on a whole different meaning and experience when you felt that connection deeply. And so went from there. I was like, first of all, what the heck was that? I didn't know, you know? And so I started asking around some of my friends, and they said, "Why don't you look into Kundalini awakening? Like it sounds like maybe that's what's going on." And so I read up about that, and I was like, "That sounds like something that I went through." And as I continued to meditate, from time to time, it would start to move again in a similar experience, and it felt even like there were other beings that would come into my space during those times. It almost felt like a spiritual birth, where you have like the midwives and whatnot who are involved. And so I'm working with this energy for years. And I even called up an ashram because I was like, can I talk to a monk or a nun? And could you help explain what this is? And I'll never forget what she said was very helpful. And she said, Now you know why we meditate. It's not just to get clear and calm and reduce your stress. It's to activate this potential within us that's waiting. Everybody has it. And she clarified for me too. She said, sometimes people get scared or confused about the sexual activation. And she said, it's simply just the nerves. You think about energy bleeding out into the tissues where it's activating, it's nerves. And I realized that to be true because when it got to my solar plexus, I would get nauseous because those nerves are getting activated. And so that was just, mystical, magical, informative, and continues to fascinate me.
Wow. I mean, I've certainly heard about a Kundalini experience. I've read about a Kundalini experience. I've talked to a couple people about their just experiences of it, and they're different. Everybody has a different kind of
Right.
experience, but you're the first person who kind of has defined it, or maybe suggested is a better word, that it's
Mhm.
also an awakening.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I think, just based on what I've heard from other people and now you, that power is nothing to mess around with. It is something
Mm.
you need to respect
Hmm.
and you need to go with the flow. And I love that you emphasize that part.
Yes. And you're totally right. Not one person has the same awakening journey. Um, some people will have the experience of it just going straight up. And I've had the experience of it being much more sequential over the years. And I think of each energy center, which you do come to understand more through this process, that each energy center has its own consciousness. Um, and certainly, as the energy moves, I have noticed that, let's say I had one, for example, time when it moved into my heart space for the first time. And that's a very profound, powerful experience. And within 2 weeks, I would say within 1 week, my external life really shifted. And I realized I was like, there's a connection here because it makes complete sense if you go back to our conversation around vibration. If I'm shifting my vibration or you're shifting your vibration, the the things that you align with in the external world have to shift too. And so I think that's where some people it can be overwhelming at times because you kind of have to be prepared for that. But if you know that that's a possibility, you can consciously move through that time with a bit more awareness and acceptance.
Thank you for that. I think a lot of people, I recently spent some time in the middle of Illinois taking care of my mother last year. And, a lot of people there think this kind of talk is bonkers. And,
Hmm.
what are you talking about? Chakras. I'm sorry, what? Kundalini, what? And it wasn't that I wasn't aware of those things or open to those things, but I did have an experience in Portland where I went in, I was seeing a flower essence practitioner and she'd make me personal blends in Portland. And so I went in and I was hungover like a dog. Okay. It's a long time ago. I was
Yeah,
so hungover. I was like, ugh. And I dragged myself into the office. I had like
we've
a
all been
headache.
there.
Yeah, I felt terrible. And I was laying on the table. And she's just doing her stuff. We have our conversation. She gets me on the table. She's just doing her thing. And we're testing the flower essences. And all of a sudden, she was doing work over my abdomen and I felt this intense, it was like a vacuum with massive suction attached to my solar plexus down there.
Mm.
And I felt this sucking come out and this thing, it whooshed out of my body. And
Mm.
she said, "Whoa, did you feel that?" And I was like, "Yes." Um, what was that? And she said, I don't know. And I got up off the table and I was no longer hungover. I was totally fine,
Ooh, I got
normal.
chills.
So yeah,
Yeah.
and that was the first time I had a direct experience with, and it was probably the work she was doing over me, but also,
Mhm.
I mean, I also think I needed to know that chakras are real, like that they
Yeah,
actually exist. And when you have a direct experience like that, you can't really say, oh, that's not real. Those don't exist.
right.
And I have to say, I appreciate you um, saying that each chakra has its own level of consciousness because I think that is true and it's so beautiful.
Hmm.
And it gives me something to think about because if it has its own consciousness, then I can have a relationship with it. And I think
Yes.
that's what's exciting. And
Yeah.
I'm always looking for new friends.
Yeah.
So why not?
Yeah. You
And
have these little
also,
built-in friends.
yes, yes. And I think also, what is fascinating is did you say Monk told you? I mean,
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
think it's really profound. And
Hmm.
also, I love that she said, I mean, I think most of us know this, or I hope most of us know this, that kind of truck in these areas, that everybody is capable
Hmm.
of this work,
Right.
is capable of opening yourself up to, and it goes back to what I brought up before of having intimate relationship with the divine or great creator or spirit. It is much
Hmm.
the same thing. We're all capable. We just have to be willing to start the conversation or to have a relationship with our chakra or begin, kind of maybe leave our comfort zone a little bit and say, hey, what's going on, heart chakra? What do you have to tell me today? Like,
Yeah,
should I buy this
absolutely.
gallon of ice cream? Hmm, maybe not.